The buyer gave us 4 hours to respond. Is that normal? The house went on the market this morning. We have 4 other showings lined up so far. We are tempted to reject the offer because it feels kind of rude and aggressive. But is that a huge mistake? Update. Our realtor is going to request 2 more hours to give us time to pick up our kid and get home from work, as well as an expedited inspection. Update number 2. After some back and forth, we accepted the offer with a shortened timeline. Turns out they aren't landlords. After some research, we realized that unless we want to mess up our neighbors' lives and worsen the market more by selling to a landlord, we aren't going to get anything this close to a cash offer at asking in our area. If it falls through for anything short of structural issues, we still have time to follow a second offer, though. And that is from a user on Reddit who was the recipient of a strategy that we call hurry up offense. And hurry up offense results in sellers forced to face this dilemma. Do you accept this offer that looks pretty good, or do you go for the bird in the bush that could be a better offer? And then if the better offer doesn't arrive, what happens to this first buyer that played hurry up offense? And with that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast 88. I am your host, Osman, with the House Einstein brokerage, and with me is Hamish Crabb. And
Hola.
Welcome to the best real estate podcast in the known universe, where we talk
First
about
and
all sorts of. We're going to talk about all sorts of fun things. But before we do, let's remind you. Let's unpack this a little. First, thank you for joining us. And the mission of the House Einstein brokerage, which supports and sponsors this podcast, is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. And if you are a client of our brokerage or would like to become a client of our brokerage, you can find us at houseeinstein.com. We cover Denver Metro from southern suburbs of Denver all the way up to Fort Collins, as well as some of the mountain towns, including some of the resort towns. And if you're not in our geographic footprint, we also have partners that we can connect you to that may be able to serve you better if it's a little too far out of field. But if you're just listening to this podcast, our lawyers would like us to remind you that this podcast is entertainment. Please do not base your real estate decisions on anything you hear in this podcast. Don't make any financial decisions, any life decisions or spiritual decisions, or personal decisions on anything you hear. This is purely entertainment. We thank you for joining us.
Be entertained.
Be entertained. Thank you. Exactly. Just don't sue us, please.
Laugh when we laugh. Yep.
That's right. Enjoy the pod. All right, Hamish. Let me run people through what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Afterwards, are we going to unpack this hurry up offense, or?
Oh yeah, we're going to go. We'll go into the hurry up offense because it's such an interesting strategy, and we can talk about our own personal experiences with it, both on the sell side and the buy side, and actually the way that this particular agent's this particular seller's agent responded, what they did, and whether that was good or not good. So we will unpack that. And after that, we're going to launch into our closing table topic, which is probably what drew you to the podcast. We're going to be talking about agent stereotypes. And it's a potential landmine of things that we might say wrong, that I might later regret that we're talking about this topic, but it is so prevalent in this industry that it is a fun one to talk about. And particularly one, given that we're going to have a little bit of a break in the podcast schedule. So we'll leave you on one I think will be a rather, or at least is intended to be a rather humorous podcast where we look at some of these agent stereotypes and talk about whether there's some truth to them or not. And with all of the years of industry experience we've had, I feel like we can make that call. But remember, stereotypes are stereotypes, and that doesn't mean they reflect reality. After that, we're going to talk about tales.
So careful on that one.
We're going to caveat the hell out of that because I really don't. I mean, it's one of these podcasts where if I ever got into politics, or you did, Hamish, I feel like this is the one that they're going to go back to and take sound bites from, without the context.
Given the state of current politics, Osmond, I think this is barely even a skip in the road if this were to be dug up. Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, some of the scandals currently are perhaps a little bit worse.
Yeah, perhaps that's objectively worse, for sure. Okay, so we're going to do our usual segment on Tales from the Trenches, this time based on a recent closing with our detail-oriented clients, who we publicly thanked for their detail orientation in our socials this week. Excuse me.
Bless you.
We're going to skip market conditions. We talked about it a lot in the last podcast, and I feel like if that's something you care about, you should go back to the previous pod and hear our rundown on what's going on at the high end. It's an eye-opener. And also remember that conditions vary right down to the street level, so be sure you do your analysis before jumping in. And at the end of the day, if you're buying, whether you're buying or selling, seeing real estate in first person is often very critical to understanding market dynamics. And a lot of agents don't bother to take that final step for sellers. And we have seen $50,000 to $100,000 swings in what we thought we were going to list at based on what competition came on market between when we signed the listing agreement and a couple of days before we go live. And without that intelligence, you're just shooting blind. And that's with 20 plus years of experience in this local market. We could still see prices swing that much by doing a tour of competitive listings. And of course, before you write an offer, you're not going to be confident unless you're seeing lots of listings. That's the best way to understand the market. But for broad market conditions, if you want to understand the high end in particular and what's happening in the Boulder market, check out last week's pod, because we went down that rabbit hole pretty far. And then in our Sales of the Week segment, we have 4 properties we're going to talk about, including 2 where the seller left a lot of money on the table, and 1 where they took a big loss after a long period on market, another where they may have been taken advantage of by a wholesaler. And I say may have, possibly. We don't really know what happened, but the numbers are telling a story that points to a wholesaler making a lot of money in a very short period of time. And one of the reasons why, and we'll talk about that wholesaler stereotype in that closing table in the earlier segment, but this will illustrate why, if it actually is what we think it is, why some wholesalers have a stereotype of being a shark. And that a shark is maybe even too nice of a way to put it, to be honest, than other words that we think could fill that behavior pattern. As usual, we have a little segment we call Shameless Self-Promotion. This time we're just going to talk about one of our buyers who are out on the hunt and have broadened their flexibility for what properties they might be looking for. Now they're willing to consider older homes that need quite a bit of work and bring in an architecture team. So we're going to talk about them a little bit. We've got 2 pieces of news to touch base on. One that's roiling markets today. With the S&P as of right now, as we're recording this, is up over 1%, which is astounding on a one-day price movement. One-day movement on the S&P of 1% is just like a shocker. That we see that kind of volatility. I wonder what the beta is right now. And I wonder what the VIX is showing right now. That would be what I would be looking at if I was still in my old role as a stock market analyst. But we're also going to talk about this crazy story with a Japanese baseball player and Hawaiian real estate and a $240 million lawsuit. And then we're going to wrap up with our usual carve-outs. I'll be talking about some outdoor adventures here in Colorado. And Hamish, I don't know what you put it in the notes, and I don't know what it means, but I'm going to let you share that when we get there, unless you want to talk about it, like give us a teaser now.
It says BroTown, and you'll have to wait for the rest. It's nowhere near it.
Okay.
Just thought it'd be funny. Yep.
And I think that wraps up our topics du jour.
Yeah. This, coming back to the Reddit post, I mean, the hurry up offense appears to have worked, right? Where the listing agent asked for a 2-hour extension and an expedited inspection. It sounds like they went under contract. had the seller denied this offer to see what other offers came in and no better offer came in, they could reach out in theory to the same buyer that did the hurry up offense, right, for another offer. Granted, the buyer might not want to resubmit, but they wanted it to begin with. So are buyers truly that fickle? Like, would they really be like, no hesitation?
Yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. But because Hamish,
I thought they wanted the house.
So if you submit a hurry up offense strategy offer, an offer based on the strategy of hurry up offense, the day the listing hit the market, okay, and the seller rejects your offer and says we need more time to allow other offers to come in, and then on Monday calls you and says, are you still interested because we'd like to take your offer? What do you conclude as the buyer?
Couldn't find anything better.
And you're overpaying.
Oh, okay, fair.
Right? So if you offer, this is the Boulder market, so let's round these numbers up a little bit. Let's say you offer, the median is close to 1.5 in our local market. So let's say you offered the listing hits the market on Thursday, is coming soon, and Friday the showings begin. You get there with your hyper aggressive agent on Friday morning. You look at the house and you say, let's get that offer in. Within like 15 minutes, your agent, like us, is really aggressive, has everything ready, and you've already gone through the whole contract in detail, so you don't need to be handheld through the contract. You just go through the offer terms. We get that offer together. You sign it via an electronic signature system, and we have your offer delivered to the seller within, let's say, realistically, 2 hours of the showing.
Yeah.
Okay, with proof of funds or a lender letter, and with an offer that is full list price, or even a little higher. Let's go $50,000 higher than list, 1.55.
Okay, maybe I'm looking at this a little naively, because I'm like, if the buyer made the offer at the price they made the offer at, it's because they wanted the house. So now they're worried about overpaying. You want the house, dude.
Okay, but
I'm looking.
I know you're
really
playing
naively.
devil's advocate. I know you're playing devil's advocate here.
I think you're completely right.
You've been part of these negotiations, so human psychology is everything, and nobody wants to overpay. And not only when you hear that no other offer was better, it does what to... So, all right, you offered 155. Let's keep walking through the scenario. Yeah. That's on Friday. The listing agent calls you back after a few hours and says, look, this is really too fast for my clients to make a decision. We also have a full slate of showings through the weekend. We're going to have to ask you to resubmit on Monday. And you say, well, I'll do my best, but my clients may not be interested in resubmitting. Okay, well, we'll be in touch. Fine. And the buy-side agent then advises their client, look, they didn't take the hurry-up offense. We're just going to have to wait through Monday to Monday. I will call throughout the weekend to just touch base to say, yes, you're still interested, and then we'll see what happens on Monday. So you call twice throughout the weekend. On Saturday, the buyer's agent calls and says, okay, just checking in. How are the showings going? It's going great. They're going to lie no matter what's happening. It's going great. We have other people swirling. Sunday,
Very
same
desirable.
thing. Oh, yeah, I think we're getting a couple of offers in tonight. I'll be in touch with you. I think we're telling everyone Monday morning, 10 a.m. Okay, Monday morning at 11 a.m., right? This agent then calls the buy side and says, hey, guess what? Your offer turned out to be the winner. Now, remember, this offer expired on Friday.
Yeah, the offer's done.
Human psychology and persuasion says that social proof works both ways. And now you have social proof that the house is not desirable because you got that phone call on Monday saying, is your client still interested because we'd like to sell you the house? Yeah. And that buyer that offered 1.55 on Friday, if they're still interested at all, because remember, you jilted them at the altar. They gave you everything you wanted and even an extra $50,000. And you did not want to negotiate with them. You told them, we'll come back to you on Monday. Now they don't feel as in love with the house because they feel like no one else offered anything close to it. What are we, some sort of sucker? Like, we don't want to pay. And maybe the house isn't even that attractive anymore. Like, the excitement, the sizzle is gone. You've looked at other houses over the weekend, and the rest of the market told you the house is not so desirable. And so now what happens? Your psychology says, I don't want the house as much anymore.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so it's all hypotheticals, right? So we can go around and around and around, and I don't want to do that. I think you're hitting the nail on the head for a lot of this. The Reddit post doesn't mention that the offer is like full terms or anything, right? So I'm imagining, and this is, again, there's a lot of kind of distrust between, and a lot of kind of he said, she said, you know, the selling agent went to the buyer's agent and said, you know, we received 3 offers. One of them is identical to yours. However, you were in the door first. Would you like to resubmit and get the home? Or would you like to, or we'll just go for this one that's identical, but they offered later, technically. That's just weird, huh? Looking at your face.
I mean, I feel like you're introducing
Like so
additional
much strangeness.
elements from what I think is a very simple
I think you're right.
psychological principle to consider, whether you're the buyer or the seller. And from the buyer's perspective, the strategy is based on putting pressure on the seller. And you're offering them everything they want, and maybe even a little more than they said they wanted in their list price. And the seller is now facing a conundrum of a bunch of birds swirling around the house. You have agents from those buyers, right, that are saying, oh no, my client wants it, they love it. Or maybe that doesn't happen either. Maybe you have to maintain the illusion and the risk that the buyer drives by it and sees it's like nobody there. It's a ghost town. You schedule an open house and nobody's there. It's a ghost town. They come back to the open house. Like, you've added all this potential. So the buy side psychology is pressure the seller, get the house.
Exactly maybe what they wanted. Yeah. Exactly
what they wanted, and they're usually pretty happy. The seller can take bird in hand or see what's behind. I'm mixing metaphors. See, take the offer or see what's behind door number 2. And what's behind door number 2 could be nothing. And now you have to go back, if you want, to buyer number 1, and they are likely going to say no thank you. If they're going to offer substantially less than they did on Friday. So that's it's a very right. So in the middle of bidding wars, Hamish, and you were part of this for the years you've been part of the brokerage, but this was continuing for at least 7 years earlier than your arrival on the scene. My success rate representing the buy side on hurry up offers was about 50-50, where we ignored all of what they said about submitting it on a certain deadline and went with hurry up offense. And if I had to apologize and say, look, my clients are flying out of town. They love this house. They really didn't. I know they wanted to honor your deadline, but they needed to get this offer in play. And they also have other houses that they're thinking about, and they don't want to lose out. They're just here for this weekend, so they need to hear a yes or no from you. Whatever the logical, sensible. I'm so sorry we offended you. We could have a whole podcast about this particular Reddit story, Hamish.
I think so. Yeah, but 50-50 takeaway.
That was my hit rate, and what I will also say is that this is a strategy that you should discuss with the agent that's advising you. And most importantly, you should be thinking about whether you really want to be this aggressive and what are the possible reactions from the seller on this. And if you're the seller going on the market with a listing that is in a very hot segment and price range, you should be having this conversation with your agent as well. Like, what happens if we start getting multiple offers? And frankly, you should be having this conversation before you choose your agent, because not everyone's very good at this. And we've seen it screwed up so often. There's a whole podcast called FUBAR about it getting screwed up, right?
Yeah, not that long ago, too.
Like two pods ago.
Yeah.
But so what happened in this particular instance, I think, is actually textbook negotiation. So the seller said, this is a great offer. We need to tease it a little harder, right? If you want us to accept this offer, that's a great offer. And that's an assumption, right? We don't really know it's a great offer. Let me see if there's
any additional detail. Yeah.
There isn't. And I don't want to spend time reading through hundreds of comments. We're just going on the basis of the top of the actual
kind of derailing
post. But I'm pretty sure, like, if you're going to play hurry up offense, you should offer list or more. And it's smarter to offer a slightly more than list if you really want the house and you want to tease the seller into taking this. But the listing agent representing the seller did a great job. You don't accept it. You ask for a little more. So this agent negotiated a shortened timeline. They negotiated a tougher inspection, like it says, anything short of structural issues. So that tells you two things: shorter timeline on inspection, and you can't terminate it unless there's something major wrong with the house, like a structural issue. If that's the case, accept the offer. Like, it's a no-brainer. But you should really know the comps in the market to feel confident that you're not leaving a lot of money on the table. And as we saw during the crazy bidding wars of 2020 to 2022, sometimes there's really dumb money out there that will offer way more than you ever thought possible. But that's not our current market environment. It's not likely, at least here in Boulder. It might be more likely in other markets, but not here.
Yeah. Okay, I think we chatted that one. Are we?
This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more.
Should we get into stereotypes? What type of agent would be the most likely to hit you with the hurry up offense?
I mean, that's a very interesting question to lead into our closing table topic, Hamish. So the closing table is about stereotypes. And after over 20 years in this industry, I can tell you there's a lot of stereotypes, some of which are true and some of which are not. And what type of agent is most likely to utilize a hurry up offense strategy? It's an agent that I think loves negotiation and has been doing this a while, is deeply familiar with the contract, can help you analyze comps, and is working with a buyer that's comfortable being this aggressive. Because the more aggressive you are as a buyer, the fewer protections you have. And so you have to be, it's not a first-time buyer that typically does something like this. And if an agent pushes their client to do something like this that isn't ready, they dramatically increase the probability of the deal falling apart. So look in the mirror. Like, we're the type of agent that would do this and have many times, right? Is there a stereotype for
And we bring
us?
it up as an option. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what is there a stereotype for me as an agent? I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this over 20 years. I have a finance background before this. There's no stereotype for that. I've met me a few times, and it's usually people that have often come from a professional background or have an MBA, but then just really love negotiation. Like, there's something cultural about negotiation, I believe. I think I told you, I've seen my mom as a kid try to negotiate at the grocery store.
And your dad too, over $1, right?
I've seen my dad walk
dealership.
away from a vehicle purchase for $1 and really not care. Like, they
That had to have felt so good. Yeah.
truly are the type of like principled and also susceptible to their own cultural biases in negotiation, right? Like, if you're going to walk away from $1, you could also be the person that buys it for $1 less, which is not exactly the smartest position. All right, like, you really, $1 is if that's the problem, then it's the wrong property, right? Is $1. Mm-hmm. It really, the first focus should always be get the right property. But let's get into these stereotypes. So we just talked about this first one, Hamish. Why don't you hit me on our team meeting with it?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking, we've got it written down, the golden retriever bro. And I'm thinking, like, to me that almost sounds like kind of like the finance bro or like the tech bro, like into the game but enjoys the lifestyle more or less more than the work itself, maybe. That's the kind of stereotype that I'm thinking of. Or like, I got into this because of the cool car and I get to wear blazers type of stereotype, maybe.
In Colorado, less so blazers, and more likely I get to keep my, I get to go fly fishing in the midweek. Yeah. I get to ski, the mountains midweek. I'm like very
keep the
chill.
overland tent on top of my car when I go to showings.
So this is I have run into the golden retriever bro many times, but they're not the most common in terms of the real estate landscape out there.
Here,
so this is a true stereotype, meaning that I think it exists out there. And I love golden retrievers. Let me start with that, because I had one for many years. They are my favorite type of dog, and I miss our golden retriever a lot, but wasn't necessarily the sharpest crayon in the box. And
I don't
didn't
think
have
they are.
great attention to detail, but super friendly and fun and into fun things and living the lifestyle. But
Excited to be there.
excited to be there and fun to work with, maybe, if you choose an agent like this. But aren't, like, you asked what type of agent is most likely to even remotely suggest you choose a hurry up offense as a strategy? It's not the golden retriever bro, right? Like, this person's just happy to be there. And when you ask them, what should you offer? Hey, I'm thinking about buying this house. The list price is 1.5. It's been on the market 45 days. What do you think? Hey, man, like, it's a great house. Let's just go for it. Like, I think it's priced right. Like, they're not looking at the comps. They're not advising you on how to get the best deal. They're just happy, and they want you to be happy.
That price has a great vibe to it. Maybe not.
This house has got a great vibe, man. Like, you don't want to piss off the seller. Like, it's not awesome. I haven't seen a house this cool in so long. And I guess, I mean, these are stereotypes, right? So keep in mind, nobody fits neatly into a stereotype. But this is somebody who is probably posting a lot of lifestyle content on their socials and not a lot of real estate content. And clearly, and the real estate content is maybe very generic, like me in front of a house and me in front of my sports car and me fly fishing and me in front of a house.
I can see it.
Like, it's not very... They're nice, but they're, like... I would not expect the golden retriever bro to get me a great deal or advocate for my interests or help me with due diligence.
I could expect to have a lot of fun shopping for houses with them, you know?
They would be, like, the kind of person you want to go have a beer with, and you always have fun, stupid conversations with. Like,
anytime they're coming over, it's going to be a good hang. You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you were hit by a bus, this is not the law dog you hire, right? To go get you personal. This is not the personal injury attorney. You want like the Frank Azar strong arm guy, right? You don't want the golden retriever guy that's just really nice and happy to please everybody.
You know, I'm trying to think of a stereotype that matches Frank Azar in the real estate industry, because that's a stereotype on its own.
It is, and I think that's
the number one agent of South Boulder, maybe.
Maybe. I think that's sort of our kind of our next one, like kind of the bulldog, overly aggressive, personal. It would have been a personal injury attorney, but ended up in real estate. May or may not be part time. So this is our next one, the bulldog.
And these are like, if they exist, and then how kind of maybe accurate they are to agents that we've worked with in the past.
Yeah, and there is an agent I think of when I think of the bulldog, but he's not always a bulldog. It's sort of like bulldog / like very self-aggrandizing, and basically,
I wish we
because
could say names.
We cannot say names. You and I both know who we're talking about, but it's just something that so our strategy when dealing with the bulldog, somebody who wants you to acknowledge their ego. And we'll start off with, I've been in this business 35 years. I've sold every house in Boulder 3 times. I've sold over 4,000 houses in town. It's not to question these numbers, okay? Because it never gets you anywhere. It's just to placate the ego. You're absolutely right. You're so smart. And you've done, I could learn so much from how, I'm just amazed at how successful you've been. Like, you're the best. You are number one in our market. Like, just mirror everything they say, because pushing back on any of that is not going to help your client, whether you're on the buy or the sell side. It's better to just give them what they so desperately want, which is acknowledgement of how great they are. And then the bulldog nature is like this, like overly aggressive sometimes,
kind of like out for blood
in ways that are surprising. I had a bulldog, and maybe this is the wrong word, bulldog, because bulldogs can be very sweet, loving dogs.
I know, but we've got shark somewhere else, so we can't use shark.
True. It's more like, maybe it's not bulldog. It might be more like
leech.
No. I'm thinking, what's that? Like the dog that keeps getting banned. The
not French bulldog, like the ones with the breathing problems.
Denver had the ban on them for a while. Pit bulls,
right?
Pit bulls. Yeah. I think the pit bull,
but they can be really
probably
sweet too.
Until they're not. Maybe pit bulls are strange. Yeah, pit bulls can be strange, but they have this perception of ferocity. Totally.
And we're all about stereotypes in this pod, so.
And can be unpredictably ferocious about something that makes no sense. And I had an agent that would qualify as the pit bull. Unnecessary aggression, This is a few years ago, and there's a norm in the real estate business, and that is, okay, you're under contract, you do an inspection, the buyer's agent submits the inspection objection,
I love
and
this
the
story.
listing agent sends back a potential resolution, and you kind of go back and forth, usually verbally, but not always. And in this particular case, my buyers were very particular about working on these 5 or 6 items. And this particular agent was the type where it was so hard to get a word in edgewise because they would just dominate every aspect of the phone call. So we decided as a strategy to try submitting an inspection resolution with the inspection objection, right? So we sent over the inspection report, the inspection objection, and a resolution signed by my clients, which said, look, these are all the things they find wrong with the house, and here are the 5 things that we just want you to address. And I get this phone call back from the other side.
Did you kind of like watch it ring a few times? Just like, oh, I know what this is going to be about.
It was within like 15 minutes of submitting it. So they were very emotional and gave me an earful of how out of line it was for us to do it this way. And this was never going to fly. It was so ridiculous. And in all my 5,000 years of doing this, I've never seen this done this way. And remember, there's nothing in the contract that says it has to be like the order that it's normally done. And given how much like noise that was coming from this agent, the thing that would be normal is to discuss what's reasonable, but it's impossible to discuss what's reasonable with somebody who's filling
Just
the space.
overbearing.
Overbearing, no space for a response or a discussion. In the end, we still got a reasonable concession for the inspection items, but holy cow, it really damaged this person's ego to have things done in a different way. And I learned something about working with that particular agent. And they're still around, and I suspect we'll negotiate again. And we have since on at least one other deal where we approached it a little differently and got a better response. But at the end of the day, remember, the agent is not the one that determines the strategy and how to take the next step. It's the buyer. And your agent should be advising you on what might come if we go with it this way. And the usual rule of thumb for inspection is that you should focus on a handful of really important issues. And you should let the cosmetic and visible and obvious issues go because you knew they were there.
Yeah.
You knew they were there when you wrote the house, but you didn't know about the old roof. You didn't know about the water heater that's at the end of its legs or the furnace. You're not an expert in those things. You thought they were in good working order. Let's call it half-life, which is a lease term. It's a half-life provision. It should if it's a 30-year useful life, it should have 15 more years left. If it has 5 years left or 2 years left, well, that's fair to possibly negotiate on. But if the driveway has cracks and the hardwood floors are poorly finished,
all things you can kind of see and recognize, right?
Things the carpets are dingy. We'd like you to pay for new carpets. Like, you're now asking for improvements, not asking for repairs. And that's something that doesn't go well for most deals. All right, let's hit the next one. Hamish, do you want to read it and tell me what you think it means?
Verbatim?
Yeah.
Senior agent, no fucks given. My guess is that this is the old dog that has seen it all, heard it all, doesn't really care. They've got the clients under their belt. They've got the business. They're just there to coast on their business until they're done with it, or they can find a successor and just call it. And they absolutely exist.
I've run into this agent and this stereotype a number of times here in Boulder, and I have to be a little careful because I want to tell a story, but I don't want to identify this person, and there's enough information in it that could trigger. But let's just say they have been in this business a long time, and their family members are also in this business, and in the midst of negotiating over price, they made it very clear that they don't care. We were representing the buyer, they were representing the seller, and they made it abundantly clear that they don't care whether this property sells or not, and that eventually it'll sell, and eventually a buyer will pay for it, and if we have to reduce the price in the future, we will, but I don't care if it was point blank, I don't care if it sells. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah. And I was like, okay, and this is in the verbal negotiation after we had submitted an offer. They're saying these things, and and their attitude just of not caring at all about their client.
Certainly a strategy.
And I was really kind of astounded by this. But that was what they were broadcasting. Eventually, we did come to terms. Eventually, we did get to the closing table. We got through inspection, too. And my clients were reasonable, probably more reasonable than they needed to be, but they wanted the house. And I couldn't attend closing. Sophie went. And I warned her about this person because of their behavior throughout the transaction, which was just completely don't care about anything. And acting also quite annoyed at any information requests, any sort of like normal aspect of the deal where you're like, can I get the disclosures? Can we work on can we get through the inspection? Like, no aspect of this throughout the deal was this person interested. And then we get to close. Sophie goes to closing, and she told me that this agent spent the entire closing trimming their fingernails.
That's right.
At the closing table. And she was so disgusted and astounded. Like, they were dressed very casually, not giving a fuck at all. And this person has 30 plus, maybe 40 plus years, 50 plus years of experience and completely don't care anymore.
This is the one that says a few non-PC things from time to time, right? Who has a lot of... I can't say anything else, but I think I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't think it's the one you think.
Okay.
And that's a different stereotypical agent, but is also in the category of no fucks given, and also a senior agent. I think I know the one you're thinking of, but no, not that one.
I think you figured it out.
But they're out
trimming
there.
Your nails too. The closings for me are very reflective of kind of like, if you're there trimming your nails, then how good are you going to feel as a client seeing your agent just like completely uninterested? It's insane.
And it was a referral, right? Like it was somebody that they had bought their home from 20 years earlier, and they chose this agent again. And so just the other day we had this conversation, right? You are going to closing. What's the experience you want our clients to have at closing? And it's a huge milestone, whether you're buying or selling. And it's very emotional. It's a big transition point in life. At a minimum, there should be like some sort of acknowledgement of that moment, and it should be joyful, or it should be poignant in case of there's some sadness involved. But it should not be like lackadaisical. And sometimes there's closing gifts. We often bring them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not appropriate to bring a closing gift because it's not a happy story for why this property is being sold. So it really depends on the circumstance. But we have to ask ourselves, what experience would we like to have with our clients at closing? And we act accordingly.
I'm trying to think if there's any other senior agent type of stories. I'd say similarly, they also want to have their ego a little bit placated, or they just won't play ball at all, right? Part of that story, I was thinking of this, and I think we've talked about it on the podcast too. We had a deal where we brought the inspection objection up, and they said, do what you want, we're not doing anything. There was a family of agents, and I think they were selling for their dad, who was also an agent, if you remember this one.
I do. And we had beaten up the seller so much on price on the first round. So this was another aggressive negotiation. We represented the buyer. We offered super low. The house had been on the market a while, and we figured they're about ready to capitulate. And it turned out they were, and we negotiated a very attractive price for our client. And then we tried to go for the jugular on inspection, and they just said absolutely not. And that sometimes happens because people regret the price they went under contract with the buyer for, and now they're just not going to play ball on anything on inspection. And we had told our client that that's possible with this situation because we had gotten such a good price.
Yeah.
At this point, like, you expect us to have gotten everything major out of these people. If we're lucky, maybe we'll get a little bit more, but I think we went below their bottom number. And they regret it, and they would like you to leave, and so they could sell it to a different buyer because they regret. They feel like they're leaving.
And there's so little exits for the seller too, right? Once you're under contract,
that's right. Okay, let's hit the next stereotype. And
this one I've seen in school. When I was in high school, I had a pretty good relationship with my science teacher, and she was very well qualified, like master's degree, a bunch of kind of additional qualifications. But then there was another science teacher in the same department who went and got all these fancy letter certificates that he could add to the end of his name. And eventually he ended up getting all the raises and stuff because he got all these certificates that were kind of more showy than a more classical education. So to rein it in, this stereotype is called the overcompensating credential addicts. Osmond.
Yeah. We've seen these people, and it's usually the stereotype is that they are very well educated and they may have worked in a high professional capacity prior to getting into real estate. So I've seen lawyers do this. I've also seen medical professionals that get into real estate do this. And they start gathering credentials. So they have enough money. They're not desperate for work. They've got savings, or maybe they're still doing their part-time primary gig, but they don't have a lot of real estate experience. And so to compensate for that, they start to get credentials. And there's a giant industry dedicated to selling real estate agents credentials. And some of these credentials have a lot of value. Some of them are a total joke. And it seems like the list of letters, the longer the list of letters are after the agent's name, the more likely they've got a credential addiction going on. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're doing a lot of business. In fact, again, this is about like people that really need to be right. And so they could get really granular in terms of contractual aspects of the deal. Like we had one like this. This was a credential addict and doesn't do a ton of business. And we were under contract with them, and after we got through inspection, our buyer wanted to go back for whatever reason, to measure, to go just check it out because a family member was in town, and they said, no, you can't go back, and brought up specific aspects of the contract that say you can't go back, and made it a really big deal for having just asked if we could visit. And as you know, there is a provision in the contract about going back called the walkthrough. And it's very
discussed in detail last pod.
Discussed in detail in the last pod. And we worked it out, but the ego, I'm right, and here are all the reasons you can't go back, was astounding.
End of discussion. Yeah.
It was like, we ended up on the phone for like an hour, and I can't, look, you can't terminate on false pretense, right? You can't, that's an act of bad faith if you were to say, I'm terminating because the loan's not working out. And it turns out the loan is just fine. That's bad faith.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have a story about that with a different agent who recommended her client do that, or just told the other side that buyer wanted out, and they said, we got a problem with the loan, we're terminating. And that listing agent immediately called the lender and said, how's the loan going? And the lender said, the loan's fine. We should be good to fund tomorrow.
I remember this. Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was the seller refused to release the earnest money, and they ended up negotiating for that earnest money. And there was a whole sob story about a family member's death and all sorts of stuff for the reasons. There were reasons why they wanted to terminate at the last minute, but none of them were defined in the contract. And so my understanding is the way that worked out is in mediation, the seller kept half the earnest money. And it was a big number. It was like $100,000. It was not a small number at all. Lawyers were involved, and that agent frankly should have lost her license for recommending a buyer act in bad faith, but she's still here in the Boulder market doing well.
I'm wondering too what difference would have been made had the buyers been honest with the sellers about whatever circumstance came up versus try to pull a fast one and terminating under loan provisions. Granted, there's a lot of money at stake to begin with and a lot of time and energy, so I don't necessarily know if you'd get away scot-free, but maybe people would be a lot less pissed at you.
It's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would prefer to try the sneaky way than the honest way. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's our client that's going to make the call. And if our client wants to do something that risks their earnest money, we will tell them, we will do what you ask us to do, but you are potentially risking your earnest money.
Yeah.
And maybe we should have this conversation on the phone, not in an email, which could be subject to discovery, versus a phone call that's not recorded is not subject to discovery. And I don't like being unethical and lying on your behalf, but I represent you. So if you want me to do these things, I would like confirmation that this is what you want to do. And you're hearing loud and clear from me that
there's
you
liability
potentially
involved.
There's right. And the better approach might be to be honest. And in this particular case, I remember them having a real reason they broke up the deal. So, okay. So the reason you may want to watch out for overcompensating credential addicts is that they may actually not have as much real estate experience as you think. Like they're compensating for a lack of experience. They're compensating because they feel some sort of inadequacy. And really you have to ask yourself, what is this inadequacy with all of these credentials? And the tricky part is that as a layperson looking at real estate agents and analyzing them, you probably are going to have a hard time discerning what is a legitimate credential and what is sort of like I took a 3-hour course and now I can add these letters to my name.
Yeah. They look, I think, fancy, but experience, from what I've seen, like actual work experience, makes a big difference with the agents. Like the continuing ed and the few classes that I've taken, they are very much, here's 3 hours of your time and you get these letters. But the agents that I see doing a lot and getting deals done just have sales behind their back. They've been in the field, they're doing these things. It's not so much the letters, right?
Even then, it's just so hard to tell. This is why interview questions are important, and you may want to look at our podcast that talked about interviews. And a new question I've been thinking about,
I want to revisit that one too.
is in one of the interview questions could be, tell me about the last business book you read.
Art
right?
of the Deal. DJT, baby.
Oh, jeez, Hamish. It's getting so cold in here. I gotta bump this. I'm just gonna turn this thing off.
All right.
It's Art of the Deal. Oh my, no. But I think that, look, that's an important question. Like, what is this person? How is this person expanding their professional knowledge and skill set? Obviously, we believe in education, but the credential industry isn't necessarily the best way to get a fantastic education in real estate. One way is, of course, to do lots of deals. Maybe you work as a junior agent under an agent that does tons of deals. Like you're working for 3 agents at House Einstein and you're getting tons of experience in this industry after 3 years. You know more than the typical agent with 10 years of experience. But then there's also other areas of professional growth. And that could be like maybe you read Chris Voss's book on Never Split the Difference. Maybe you are studying up on negotiation tactics that take advantage of persuasion. Like there's all sorts of things. Maybe you're studying up on due diligence and expansive soils, or you've been, we're recently learning about the new fire codes related to remodels and expansions. And maybe that's something that you're studying to help advise your clients about. It doesn't have to. If you ask them what's the latest business book and they pivot to, let me tell you about what I've been reading about, that's an okay answer. If it's still in line with the question, it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a series of podcasts. It could be your own study of the new code. But they should be doing something.
What are you doing to stay fresh? Yeah. What are you doing continuing ed outside of your regulated, required continuing ed?
And if they
Show
can
me
say,
you're interested. Yeah.
Hey, I've completed my GRI. And the GRI requires a certain number of real estate transactions to even take that coursework. It's a multi-year program. And they can then explain, well, how does that benefit me as your client? Walk me through it. And they could talk to you about, well, let me tell you all the things that I learned that I really, I could really help you in these areas because these are some things I newly discovered about the business. And there's a lot. This business, just the rabbit hole just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. So, but if they stumble with that answer because they don't read books or they don't watch, they don't care about advancing, they already learned it all 20 years ago.
I'm as good as it gets. Yeah.
Right.
I'm as learned as I can be.
I'm number one. Okay.
We might want to go through these a little bit quicker. Oz, do you want to?
I was just about to say the same thing. We are taking too long with each of these. All right. Let's hit our next one. And this one is probably the one that's going to potentially get me in the most trouble, but I'm going to combine it, Hamish, with the one that's below it, because they're kind of similar, right? And these are people that return to work after a break from work, and maybe they took that break because of family reasons, right? They left their professional job to start a family, and after 8 years, they've decided to come back. And real estate's a really attractive way to come back. You can study for it while you're dealing with the baby, and then take the exams and sign up with a brokerage once baby has at least half the day in daycare. And it's a way to jump back into the business. And so that's somebody that we have affectionately termed the return to work lassie, or well-connected soccer mom or dad. And this is somebody that the longer they're out, right, like especially if they have multiple kids, they meet a lot of people through their families. And as a consequence of their network, they can have a giant book of business, because one of the first principles about being a real estate agent is that people do business with those they know and they trust. And the more people you know, the more likely people are going to say, hey, I heard you got your real estate license. Can we do a deal? And if you're broadcasting it all over your social media and constantly talking about real estate and spinning those stories to benefit you and your clients, they're going to want to work with you, especially if you're friendly and warm and fuzzy. All of those things, right, will likely bring you a big book of business. And sometimes the return to work lassie, and I'm thinking about Lassie the dog, by the way, when I say with Lassie
Good
on
distinction.
Here. Like
That's
Lassie
not
the
where
dog.
my mind goes, so I'm glad you said something.
Right, because you're a New Zealander and Lassie probably means something totally different to you. But
Is Lassie Timmy fell down the well?
Lassie is Timmy fell down.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's a really flowing, beautiful dog that, except Lassie was really smart. That's the problem with this, using Lassie as a word. But that was, that type of dog is what I imagine is the return to work Lassie. This is somebody that just knows a lot of people, is very warm and well connected, and as a consequence will get a lot of business right off the bat, but frequently will not know much about the real estate business at all, and will make all sorts of mistakes on the way to closing for each and every deal, for which they may or may not get coaching and mentoring, depending on which brokerage they chose. So this person could be full of liability and risk for you, but it could also be somebody you really like. And it's somebody that's just is fun to be around. So not that different from the golden retriever bro, but the connections are all through this, like this pause in their professional career because they were raising a family. And that raising a family resulted in a massive network. And that massive network is now what they're looking to cash out. And watch out, because they may not know what the hell they're doing. And frequently, frankly, don't.
And I mean, it's not to say all this comes with, like, these are stereotypes, and there are very good ones of all of these stereotypes. This return to work lassie is also probably a prime candidate for like a Juice Plus salesperson or a Cutco or any type of MLM, having that massive network. Perfect. But that's kind of what I'm imagining is like, yeah, I've been doing great. Sales are awesome. You should buy a bunch of these knives from me and go door to door and also sell those. Like, it's kind of got that same energy to me.
Well, historically, the big brokerages love this type of agent because they didn't push hard for all sorts of services. They brought a lot of business in, and really, who's running the deal is the managing broker or the employing broker, the broker of record, whoever is supervising this agent. And that agent may or may not care. It could be a senior agent, no fucks given type person. And so you have a lot of return to work lassies that are not well supervised. And that's really the risk for you as a buyer or seller is you might like this person and trust this person, and this person may want you to believe they know what they're doing, but they really don't. And
they may also be so interested in keeping your friendship that they don't tell you they don't manage you. And so that they can walk you and themselves into a bad deal or a bad situation.
Or right off a cliff.
Home. Yeah, right off a cliff.
Right into a legal liability, right into overpaying, right into not buying a home that's a bad choice in a lot of ways because of environmental issues, all sorts of problems. It's just, we're going to get to the last thing is really how do you think about agents? But let's hit the next one. And that is the part-timer lifestyle realtor. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of the golden retriever bro, but a little bit different.
Overlap. Yeah.
There's some overlap here. And these are people that really are only doing real estate as a part-time job so that they can enjoy a lifestyle. And frankly, I thought I was going to be a part-timer lifestyle realtor when I got into this business, because what I envisioned was, oh, wow, the commissions are high. and the business is seasonal. So from September through March, I'm just going to travel the world and enjoy life. And then I'll do a couple deals in the summer and it'll be great. Except it doesn't work that way. And of course, that sort of desire to have a lot of life and a lot of travel and adventure and not work that hard ran full conflict with my other principles and values, which are totally different than that, right? Like driven, ambitious, ethics, integrity, supportive, like care, right? Care about what I do, give a shit. And so you can't be both a part-time lifestyle realtor and really cut it as a professional in this business. So I had to choose, and that was a long time ago. I made that choice, like over 20 years ago. But what initially attracted me was you eat what you kill, you work the hours you work, you don't have a boss, and if you're good at this business, you can be quite successful, even with only a few deals a year if you keep your cost basis low. But the reality is that that's not how this industry works, that you have to be in it day in and day out, and the world throws all sorts of stuff at you, particularly when you're trying to go out of town. And you have to have systems to take care of your clients when you travel. You have to be on call all the time. We work nights, we work weekends, we work on vacation. I don't leave without Starlink anymore because if I'm going to go camping, I hiked a 14er, and which we're going to talk about in the...
At the top of it, you boosted the beacon.
Yeah, I literally put up Starlink, at the top, at the bottom, at the trailhead that night. I'm plugging it in
the visual,
and checking emails and phone calls because I can't be out of pocket. Even if there's no active deals under contract, I can't be out of pocket because client may want to see a house and time is of the essence, and you may lose the opportunity if we don't move fast. So...
this stereotype kind of reminds me of like here for a good time, not a long time. And I think, most agents fail within the first 3 years. I think a lot of it is because they do this napkin math of like, here's the median home price in Boulder. Here's, kind of a range of commissions. It should be great. But I want to see a chart of how many real estate agents have been kind of nabbed by the IRS, because I have a feeling a lot of agents don't do their part as far as paying taxes and end up getting screwed in the back end.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic is tax implications, and people that don't pay a lot of attention to detail are likely to end up in financial trouble when they no longer are having deductions from their paycheck, like a normal, W-2 paycheck. Withholding, they're not having withholdings, so they start getting these big checks, and then they end up with a big liability. It's another great question to ask a potential agent is, do you owe any money to the IRS? This is going to be kind of an awkward question, but have you ever been in trouble with the IRS? And see if they jump at that, because that's a pretty big red flag in terms of their professionalism and their attention to detail and their systems. And expect a little bit of a learning curve. New agents are, they're not going to make enough money to be of interest to the IRS, but experienced agents, by the time they've been doing this 10 or 15 years, they better have their systems dialed in. They better have a good accountant, a good bookkeeper. And you could ask them, hey, let me ask you a question about the real estate business. How do you get your bookkeeping and your accounting done every year on time? And see how they react to that. And if they can talk about their systems, they've got systems. Right? Like you don't have to directly ask if they've ever been in trouble. You can warm them up first with a little teaser and then hit them with, do you ever run into trouble with the IRS? Just as part of a friendly, bantery conversation. And read their body language.
The interview.
And read their micro expressions, and you will get your real answer. Okay, let's hit our next stereotypical agent. And this is the one that honestly is really quite sad. And we're going to talk about this one in a lessons from sales of the week, because I think we have a deal that an agent like this was involved with, and that is the wholesale shark. And wholesalers are notorious for looking for distressed sellers who have, maybe they've been on the market a year or two and they have not been successful selling their home. They are often elderly. They may be widowed or dealing with some other tragedy in the family. I've personally been involved in a situation where a family member inherited the house, and the home was full of the family member's hoarder stuff. Like it was a hoarder house. And they did not, and I walked them through this. I'm like, I can help you prepping this house for sale properly. Let's get all their stuff out, get the house cleaned, and sell it retail. And they had reached out to us to find a wholesaler, and I said, wholesalers are in it to make money. Like they are there to basically hand you a check and then immediately sell it to somebody else and make a lot of money on it. And they said, no, we want a wholesaler. We don't, because of the emotions involved with the hoarder family member, the death of this family member. They just wanted to wash their hands clean and did not want to deal with anything. And so we helped them find a wholesale buyer who flipped it for like $100,000 or $50,000 immediately. Like at closing, they call it hold it open, don't file all the records, and they flipped it without even going to another buyer. And it's just, I don't know, it's a business that makes you feel dirty.
It's
like
predatory,
you need to go take a shower. It's totally predatory.
Yeah.
And it should be regulated like paycheck lending. It really is a gross part of the business. And I know somebody who's a wholesaler, and he'll tell you what he does is fix tired and broken and sick houses. Like that's what he really does. And he's got a list of contractors that do that and a group of people that come in and they'll have dumpsters there the day after closing. Everything's out of here. They'll gut the house and they'll have it back on the market in 6 to 8 weeks, and it will look totally different, and they will likely clear 6 figures or more for 8 weeks of work. And because of your emotions tied up into this, you don't want to do that process. They have profit for it. And I just think it just feels gross. And so I've never been attracted to the wholesaling industry. The wholesale shark is somebody you really should watch out for.
If you're having a hard time like visualizing what this type of person is, think of like a mechanic where they're like, you take your car in because your turn signal's out, and rather than the mechanic being like, yeah, it was just a fuse, I went ahead and replaced it, no charge, they're like, yeah, that's going to be a whole new headlight assembly, and they just pocket the extra money and kind of bank on you not knowing market value or anything about your car, right? Similar?
Or a plumber that shows up and instead of replacing the cartridge...
We'll dive into the plumber thing later, but...
Okay, well, I don't think you're talking about that today. You're talking about BroTown. But instead of replacing the cartridge, sends you an estimate for $1,700 to replace everything in the bathroom. I'm like... it's a mixing cartridge. So yes, there are sharks out there. There are people that want to prey on your lack of knowledge, want to prey on your desperation, and they want to prey on your hopes for something to resolve quickly and have a pile of money in your hand to walk away from a mess. And these are the We Buy Ugly Houses people that put the billboard up. Mm-hmm. These are the people that hire people for $10 an hour to go litter the entire city with these little signs that are stuck in every median that say, want to sell your house? We pay cash. And then there's a phone number there, right? Like these are really shady people that typically have very little scruples, morality or ethics, and they're looking to take advantage of widows and orphans and elderly, or anybody that just doesn't know the true value of their house. And they are out there, 100% out there. They were even known to hire people to just do cold calling, right? So they will cold call the phone book. They will cold call. They will look at hospital records. They will look at court case records. They are looking for people that are, and find these people, and they're paid a finder's fee for the cold calling that results in real leads. I know somebody in town that used to do this, and it just tells you everything you need to know about the way they view humanity and their perspective on the transactional nature of it.
Just make a buck as soon as and as quick as they can. Yeah. Obviously, listeners, we have a pretty positive outlook on these guys.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's round this out. So that's our agent stereotypes. There's, of course, many others. And, of course, stereotypes are stereotypes. There might be a kernel of some sort of grain of truth to a stereotype, or it could be just outright prejudice. You decide, but in terms of real estate stereotypes, I feel like we had a lot of the ones that are out there, and you may want to ask yourself what you're looking for in terms of your agent. And I can tell you that if I were you as a buyer or seller, knowing what I know about the industry, let's say I left and I wanted representation to buy or sell homes, I would be looking for a team or an agent that can talk about their principles, can talk about their values, can talk about the additional services they provide and why those things really matter. Like on the buyer's agency side, we've been interviewing for a referral for a friend. What I'm looking to hear from these agents when I call them to interview them for this referral that's out of state, by the way, are things like, well, we care about helping our client negotiate a great deal. We care about helping guide them through due diligence. We care about advocating on inspection issues to get things resolved. We also will encourage our client to not write an offer when it's the wrong house. And during the and this is one of the agents just said this to me on the phone, and she does exactly what we do, which is at a showing, we point out everything we could see that's not so great about this house. Yeah. And in fact would tell you, I wouldn't write an offer on this house because of these issues. And that's, I feel like selection, that's what I call that, is advice on selection, is critical on the buy side. On the sell side, it's these people that want you to believe they can sell anything at any price because of their experience. I would be wary of. I'd be asking questions like, how are you pricing my home? Like, how are you keeping tabs on the changing market? How are you getting feedback from people that have seen my home? How are you marketing the home to make it show its best? How are you advising me on preparing the home? Can you show me examples of your videography and your photography? Can you walk me through the last couple of deals you did? We'll just pick them up off your Zillow. Walk me through the stories of those deals, and not just what went right, but tell me what went wrong and what you learned from it. And that's who I would want advising me, not the person that already has all the answers, but the person that is learning.
Yeah.
And wants to help me and advocate for me.
You also gave a piece of advice which I thought was pretty honest, and it was that you can pick an agent you like, but you should maybe lean towards one that's a little bit contrarian to your personality, right? Where there's a kind of almost like, not personality maybe, but approach to things, where you kind of get this overlap, and they're not going to be a yes person to you, but they're not going to be a complete contrarian too.
Well, this is the true value of diversity. Yeah. And if you choose to work with people, or you choose people to represent you that are very much like you may feel more comfortable in their presence, but they also may not be the best fit because they're just telling you what you already know, versus somebody that comes from a different background, different experience. Maybe you're not analytical and they're super analytical. That's a great match because they're bringing value that you hadn't considered. And if all they're doing is telling you stuff you already felt and knew, then it might be more fun to go hang out with these people.
Yeah.
But it may not be the service fit may not be quite as high. It's something to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was really cool when you said that. So I was like, going to use it in the pod.
We had a discussion with our friend that is buying outside of our local market, and one of his pushbacks when we originally had started talking about which type of agents we should be looking for is he wanted somebody, that got him as a potential buyer, and that's what the pushback was. Well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This isn't somebody you're dating. This is somebody that's going to be your advisor, and you really want them to notice things you don't notice. So
like,
all right.
I could riff on that for a minute, but yep.
We could, but I think this is a good wrap on the closing table. Why don't we move on to Tales from the Trenches? This is where we share personal stories from recent closings that we've learned from, that add value, that often can be humorous, maybe. Perhaps we illustrate some mistakes we made and talk about how it sort of worked out. And we're very happy to talk about a recent closing at 2575 Cragmore. And in fact, we thanked our clients in kind of an unusual way in some of our socials, which I feel like deserves a little explanation. And what we wrote into the social gratitude was that we're thankful for their detail orientation. And these were first-time buyers, lovely people, and very, very well educated and work in the healthcare world. And as first-time buyers, asked a lot of questions and went really down the rabbit hole of details, which, even though I've been doing this over 20 years and we have our systems pretty well dialed, there's always something new to learn. And in this particular case, the house was, I want to just give a little hat tip to the seller. The seller, even though we negotiated very aggressively and strategically over a multi-month period on this house, the seller was professional and kind throughout the process. I met them when we went and looked at inspection issues. I was attending inspection issues with a contractor, and the seller was very kind and very on it. And it was very helpful, actually, to explain what we were looking for, because they weren't entirely sure about due diligence documents. So I told them what we wanted, and they sent it over. And in particular, we were trying to figure out aluminum wiring, right? And they weren't sure whether one room had been wired, and they didn't have all the records, and we kind of walked through it. And we talked, and I also had an opportunity to talk to them about why aluminum wiring is of concern, particularly to a first-time buyer with a young child. All of that was super helpful, and the listing agent too was very professional throughout the transaction process. But the details,
big hat tip to him too, actually.
The detail that came up was really unusual, and the house had an adorable rabbit in it in the living room. Okay, and
free range.
I mean, this was a big floppy-eared, free-range rabbit for the most part. At every showing, was just kind of hanging out in the living room on the lower level of the house. Kind of a family room space, a carpeted space too. And there was a few kind of rabbit things. I don't know what else to call it. Like rabbit cage, like rabbit toy maybe. But the rabbit was adorable. And we also noticed that outside of the door to that room, which led to the backyard, there was a bunch of droppings. And I didn't see any droppings in the house. And when we wrote the offer, we normally write in that we would like the house clean to a professional standard at closing, right? For the walkthrough,
I think we specify usually it's like 1 to 3 days before closing.
I mean, basically the goal is to have it cleaned after the seller has moved all their stuff out. And we don't necessarily want to require professional cleaning, because it's quite possible the house is already clean and the seller just maybe needs to clean the stove. So sometimes we might write inclusive of appliances. It depends on what our client wants. But in this particular case, we were so focused on the big picture negotiation that we didn't really get granular on the house cleaning until like a week before closing, when our clients told us about health issues that relate to rabbits, including rabbit fever. Health issues significant enough that it's a question that is asked of pregnant women if they have exposure to rabbits, because it can result in a terminated pregnancy. And I had no idea about any of this stuff. Okay, this is not my world of expertise, like issues that relate to these diseases and pregnancy. And so we had not written in steam cleaning of the carpet. And I don't know anything about rabbits that are domestic and whether they're continent or not. Like, is the rabbit defecating into the carpet? And feces can be a common vector for all sorts of diseases, especially with mice. And rabbits are not exactly that functionally different when it comes to their feces.
They have their own host of things.
And they have their own host of diseases. And we hadn't thought about any of that because we were so fixated on the big negotiated discount.
Also cute rabbit. Yeah.
And again, really cute, but that doesn't mean it's not a disease vector, right? Also applies to humans, by the way. So we did end up having to ask for like steam cleaning, and of course the seller wasn't contractually obligated for steam cleaning. And we went back and forth on it a few times, and at the end of the day, they just weren't going to do it, and which is fine. But the lesson for us was, when there are, I think this is a lesson, Hamish, and maybe, well, actually, what do you think the lesson is? Let's see what you say.
For me, my takeaway is almost like, regardless of there being first-time buyer clients and everything, is we put a lot of effort into being like, okay, our offer's been accepted, but let's not celebrate yet. You know, let's wait until the closing table is celebrated. But I almost, it's a weird, like, I almost feel like we want to have like a sit down with our clients if we're on the buy side and be like, what are our expectations of the home, any home, before we even have an address in mind, when you take possession. And then we work from there and kind of incorporate it into the into the strategy. Because there's the big picture thing, right? Which is where if you go and you put in the additional provisions and you're like, I want this professionally cleaned by the most expensive service in Boulder, that's looking like a pretty tall ask in your offer. So you're less likely to get accepted. but kind of just have that conversation with the clients on particular details that we might miss because we're like, oh, a rabbit, but not realizing that there's kind of more to it.
Yeah, so I think that's an important lesson, that we could have had that conversation with our clients around, what do you expect this home to look like when the seller's out of it and you're moving in? Like the day of closing, what is your expectation of what this home's condition will be? And then we can also have this conversation around, should we be aggressive on this, or should we fixate on the negotiated price? Because if we are aggressive on the detail for how the house is going to be cleaned, the listing agent has to explain it. It's not a standard provision.
Can't just slip it in. Yeah.
And it may send a signal to the other side about how easy it's going to be to deal with you. And I had a deal, this is probably 10 years ago, Hamish, with a buyer named Craig, who I hope is listening because he's one of my favorite clients.
Hey, Craig.
And Craig and I wrote an offer on a house in Table Mesa, and we did not get it. It went to the other buyer. And my recollection is our offer was cash, closing pretty quick. And they wanted a post-closing occupancy, which we granted. But they went with a worse price because in the additional provisions, I had written in language that says, seller shall grant buyer right to visit the home up to 3 times with an architect with reasonable notice in order to discuss plans to improve the house. And they were so put off by that they went with a different offer. And I only found out after our offer was not accepted. And the listing agent told me that was the issue, that we felt like your client would just be too difficult. And we had gotten so granular in the additional provisions on exactly when and how they're going to notify and the seller will allow it. The language was very legally sounding, even though we're not attorneys.
That's a very real risk, yeah.
And so this is where you have to balance. You have to look at this contract like it's not just about the price. They're going to read all sorts of things into this. So you could write a due diligence document section that is very granular and specific. You could have all sorts of additional detail. But when you do that, you introduce this concern that you're going to be a difficult buyer. And that may result in them not giving you the price you want. Or it may result with you not getting the house at all. Because I'll tell you, if I think I'm selling you something and I think you're going to be a pain in the ass, I'm going to pad that number for my misery, right? I'm 100%. If it's going to be a simple deal and you're not going to give me a hard time, I'm going to give you a better price because I know I don't have to put up with this. Like, it's a simple deal. Like, if you wanted to buy one of my motorcycles and you're like, I'll take it as is. No, don't touch it. Just show up with the title. I'll take it. I'll be like, here's your price. $500 less than I would have sold it to anybody else because you're going to save me so much mental and emotional aggravation. And somebody that writes into the additional provisions this like 300-word essay about how clean the house is going to be, I don't want to deal with this person. Like, how do I know they're not going to cause all sorts of problems the whole way through the contract because they're so particular?
Exactly. Like, and it's kind of like a give an inch, take a mile type of situation. I completely forgot what I was going to say after that, though. So, well, I'll rest my case.
so there's multiple lessons from the detail-oriented clients, but our lesson is also that they ask great questions throughout the transaction about the contract, about the next steps, and we did something we don't often do, which is schedule a pre-meeting walkthrough, a pre-walkthrough meeting. So before the final walkthrough in the property, normally we just schedule it and meet the client. But we thought it would be helpful to actually talk about what to expect, how it might go, what the worst case scenarios might be, none of which happened, by the way. And partially that's because I wasn't able to do the walkthrough. And I've had a couple of bad stories at walkthroughs, which we talked about in the last pod. Right? We talked about some pod walkthrough disasters. And those are very uncommon, but each of those contained a lesson. And that gave them a lot of comfort that we have thought about bad scenarios happening at walkthrough and what would we do in response to these bad scenarios based on what we've learned in the past with bad things happening at walkthroughs. And I think going forward, scheduling a quick check-in the week of closing before the walkthrough is helpful. And also the other lesson is when we write the offer, have this discussion of like, what does the house look like when it's closed? Because we put in this usual language that says house cleaned to a professional standard, and usually that's good enough. This is the first time in any of our deals where that has not been good enough, and we didn't
For good
realize it
reason,
until
too.
the week of closing because of Roger Rabbit.
I would like to shout out the listing agent. There was a desk there, and I brought it up with him, and he went 30 minutes after we had the walkthrough, disassembled it, and removed it before we could even finish closing. So,
Awesome.
Big shout out. Just got out there, took care of it.
He was great to work with the whole way through.
Yeah.
So. And I'm sure the steam clean the carpet situation was something that was not so pleasant to have to kind of work through, right? Because it's an unusual ask, especially after everything had been negotiated. Like this was
gonna say that's it's tough. And then it's like, well, if I was a seller, it'd be easy to go rent a steam carpet cleaner and do it yourself. But it's also like there is a certain point where you're like, oof, I got a lot negotiated off of the list price of this home. I'm kind of feel like I've done my part,
Right. Also, the other thing to think about is that our clients with medical expertise know the risk of a rabbit. These people that live in this house with kids in the house don't think the rabbit's a risk. They live with this rabbit.
Good
so
point.
They're not going to accept that you think the rabbit's a risk because they accept that risk. So it's going to be a difficult when there's no leverage, there's no way to there's no deal point, inflection point to work on. It's sort of a tough sell. So
yeah.
So anyway, details matter. We deeply appreciate our clients. It's an amazing house. I think they got really an amazing deal on that house. I think the seller also is quite happy with how it worked out in the end. Although I think the price point is probably a lot lower than they would have liked. But hey, they got it closed. And a lot of houses are not closing in Boulder right now. And when we go through sales of the week, we're going to talk about some people that lost a lot of money, which these sellers definitely did not. They did just fine. But their expectations were clearly much of they were hoping for a much higher price, but they ended up quite a bit lower. Our buyers, of course, are thrilled with that discount. And in the end, I think everyone's happy. But certainly, I hope our clients are, and we look forward to having a really fun closing dinner with them in the near future.
Right before we go over to sale of the week, I got them a cake from a local store in Boulder, Fantastic Cakes, but they put the wrong spelling of the name, and I still took it and presented it. The clients took it very, very well, and it was actually kind of like a fun little Easter egg. Osman, your text at closing was really funny. Congratulations, and then you said the misspelled name. They were fantastic. I went and saw them, I think, yesterday. Oz, that same business, gave us a $25 gift card to make things right, so I passed that on, and it seems like they're really enjoying the home. Very cool home.
Yeah, and now they have an excuse to go check out that confectionery delightful store on Pearl Street. So that was a smart move on the store's part too.
Totally.
But minor attention to detail lapse on the cake decorator because it was on the sticky note. It was clear whose names were supposed to be on that cake. But
I even made sure that her name was spelled correctly. Is how much I wanted them to make sure that they didn't screw up the cake. And yet, anyhow, we've got this home. Sold last week.
It did. Very happy for our clients. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to sales of the week. And this is a segment where we talk about the lessons from recent closings that we think might be illustrative of market conditions or deal points. In this case, a market that's changing pretty quickly. And our first listing is 531 Arapahoe Avenue. And this particular property was listed in September of 2024. Remember, the fall is not a great time to list a home in general. We try to advise our clients to, unless they really need to sell it, they should strongly consider using that time to make improvements, to declutter it. We'll give you a staging consultation with a PowerPoint for each and every room of what you should do. You have time to hire contractors, have it pre-inspected, and get ready to launch in the spring market. That's usually a better strategy for maximizing sale price. But they listed in late September for 2.2, and nothing happened. They pulled it off the market in early December and then brought it back at the same price at 2.2 in mid-January. And then nothing happened for 45 days, and they withdrew the property on April 5th, and they refreshed the listing. So they listed it again the same 2 days later, 2 days after withdrawing it from 2.2. They brought it back at 1.995, so just below 2, a $200,000 discount, a little less than 10% below the list price. And once again, nothing happened. So from March 7th through mid-June, there were no compelling offers, and they dropped the price to 1.9 in mid-June. I would argue they dropped it too late. They should have dropped it in April, not May. And then it went under contract in early July, and it just closed at 1,815,675, which is sort of a weird number. It's a very oddly specific number, but that's where they ended up, and the listing agent ended up representing both sides of the deal, probably as transaction broker, although we don't really know. But he is credited as both the listing agent and the agent on the selling, which means representing the buyer. There's no further deal notes other than to say the deal was cash. So the interesting thing about this deal, okay, so the house itself is older. It's historic, built in 1900 originally, which of course limits its potential improvement because of historic review. Maybe it's fine, but likely you're going to be locked into the way the house looks today from the front 3 walls. It has no garage, which is a deficit, but it does have 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, and reasonable square footage. Maybe a little small, 2,500, but not horrible, and a decent lot. In the long run, these locations that back to the creek are amazing, right? The riparian corridor, the stream, and the wildlife, and the temperature that's much cooler.
Yeah.
All are super attractive. But what's not attractive, and I've warned my clients about this location for this specific reason, is that our homelessness issue in Boulder is quite horrible and has not been getting better. Bob Yates just had an interesting article about it that he wrote, where he called it
He's
sort
always
of like
got something.
well, his analogy was a bathtub where the drain is draining. Like, we're losing homeless people, we're getting people out into housing, but the bathtub is filling faster than it's draining because of all the people that are coming from out of our area for the services that Boulder has and the lifestyle that Boulder has. And that homelessness issue is acute in this particular location in Boulder.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate thing because basically for as long as I can remember, that this location has been so magical, except for maybe the last 10 to 15 years where it's been on the struggle bus because of how many people are camped in the creek shed. Sad to see it sell for so little in my mind. 1.815 is a huge discount and obviously a lot less than the sellers were expecting. And let's see, what did they acquire the house for? So these people, how did they do on the deal? I think I put these ones into the little IRR calculator. So they bought the house in 2010 for $1,030,000. It's unclear if they put any improvements into the house. That is not known. It's also not marketed, so we're just assuming no further capital improvement. And at the sale price, you're looking at a 3.9% IRR, which is effectively annualized appreciation, which is not particularly great in one of the best locations in town. And I think it had this homeless thing not been an issue, if they actually had been able to get their 2.2, it would have been closer to a 5% IRR. Still better, but also not amazing. And for the buyers, hopefully they were well advised about the issues related to this location. But given that the listing agent was involved and there was no buyer independent representation, it would not surprise me if the buyers are totally going in blind. And I guess we'll find out if it ends up back on the market in a year.
The thing for me on this one is the photo stack almost feels backwards. I'm just used to going through the front door of a home, and this goes from the backyard through the back door into the home. It almost feels like.
Yeah. I mean, so when people start with not the curb shot, you immediately think something's wrong with the house, right? Like this is the risk of not having having much curb appeal. But honestly, the curb appeal of the house in the summer is not bad. It's not an unattractive house.
It's cute. Yeah.
It's a cute little cottage, and you could have just gone with photo number 33, which just shows the peaked front door. That's a cute photo with the 2 flowers on either side. Mm-hmm. So, I get why agents sometimes market homes not with the leading typical front photo, but it also sends a signal that there's something wrong with the house, right?
That's at least exactly how I picked it up. Like, I almost didn't include this. These are hand-picked sales of the week. They're not hand-picked, but hand-picked them. And this one I almost didn't pick because I was like, oh, it might not be a good house.
In case you missed that, Ham is short for Hamish.
Yeah.
Hamish chose today's sales of the week. We were running out of time, so he did his pass-through, and he chose these ones. Yeah. It is what it is. It's sort of just a sad...
Totally.
You move this house into a different, like Newlands, it would probably be worth, another $500,000.
That's not a bad point. Shall we?
Absolutely. Okay, our next listing.
I think you saw this one.
I jumped into a weird order. I thought that's really funny. All right, let's hit our next one. Our next one is 1670 Linden Avenue. And I did see this particular property with buyers. It is not a bad part of town, actually. 60s era house. Not great that it's north facing, but Linden, just west of 19th Street, is a pretty quiet spot. And you're not going to see like a lot of property crime or other problems like that in this part of Boulder. You're also not amazingly walkable, right, to a lot. I mean, I guess you can get to the Lucky's Empire by heading to the north, but you're not like strolling to downtown, and you have to cross Iris if you want to, get to Alpine and the ideal shopping area. But still,
it's like properly interior, right? Like it's far enough away from things where stuff doesn't really happen there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of call it North Central Boulder. Smallish house, 1,680 square feet, but totally done up and remodeled inside and out. And I thought, I think it's a fake lawn in the back, but it was so beautifully
to be real. Yeah,
it's like right out of Dwell magazine or another architectural magazine. It's a design magazine. It was really cool to walk through this house with our buyers and think about its function. We really like the accessory dwelling space. It's a cute house, but at the end of the day, it was just too small, and we had to look past all the wow, right? Like, 'cause it's very pretty, it's very sizzly in terms of its emotional appeal, but from a functional perspective, we just couldn't get our head around it. Like, how do we make this small of a house with so little functional storage really work? And it has one of those classic things that people really say they like, and that's the cabinets that are not, it's the shelf in the kitchen, not the closed cabinet. Keeping things clean on that type of setup is virtually impossible, right? Your dishes are always going to be dusty. It's a beautiful home. I really liked it, but also a home that was impractical in so many ways. And so let's talk about what happened to the house on the market. It hit the market. We're talking about 1670 Linden Ave. I think I already said that. Let me say it again.
Good to recap.
It hit the market in... hold on. The sellers acquired the home in 2020. So July 2020. Which, by the way, was shortly after the market had unlocked. And at the time, the home had been listed at 1.259, and that particular seller played guess the right price and started dropping the price by by 10 grand a week or 10 grand every other week until it finally found these buyers at 1.2, and that was on July 29th, 2020.
I'm talking listed in 2022, and so
oh yeah, you're right. I apologize. I'm talking about them. Yeah. Thank you. I skipped. That's the earlier.
Good. I was just like, am I missing something? Yeah.
So the 2020 buy was 1.2 and didn't sell right away. And then 2022, and I think this is, we'll have to look at the remodel. It would not surprise me if let me just look at it right now. So let's get this right, since we've gone down a 3-seller rolling history.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah, let me go look at the 2020 photos. And the 2020 photos show a house that is, again, a designer dream. But I don't know if the ADU was built at that time. I'm looking for a backyard photo. The square footage was 1354. So at that time, it did not have the ADU. And I'm going to add this into the cart. And that buyer who bought it for 1.2 added the ADU and then put it back on the market 2 years later. Was it a full 2 years? Yeah, about full 2 years later. And when they brought it back, they listed it at 2. And that first photo, by that way, Hamish, is of the ADU. And now it's up to 1,688 square feet.
Okay.
And listed at 2, it went under contract within the first 2 weeks. Nope, sorry, just after the first 2 weeks. And the buyer paid $2 million for it. And that's September 29th, 2022. Now, these buyers didn't really do anything. So if you look at the photos of the house from 2022, it looks the same as it looks today. And these people listed the home at $2 million, same price they paid for it. I guess actually $5,000 less. And that was in April of 2025, this year. Nothing happened. They refreshed the listing in June at 1.895. So basically $105,000 below what they paid for it. And it closed at 1.895, or just under 1.9. And now let me look at the deal details to see if there's any additional concessions. Yeah, ouch, because that means that they lost...
Plus commission.
Well, right. Without commissions, they lost $105,000. Add in probably 5 to 6%, somewhere in that zone, on commissions for additional loss.
Real pain.
Yeah, well, why are we talking about this? Okay, so there were no additional concessions on this deal, and the buyer paid full list at 1.9. Again, our buyers were not interested because of the issues in the house, the functional issues. It's beautiful. I mean, it is like the make-believe. Imagine you could live without all your things, and this house is like perfect. But if you actually have the typical modicum of things that most people have, all the gear, all the stuff that you acquire in life, clothing and so forth, if you're not a minimalist, if you are a minimalist, this is an amazing house. But if you're not a minimalist, it's a challenging house. And that's the conclusion we reached with our buyers. But the buyers paid full list, and it sold for 1.9, and the sellers lost about 105 plus commissions. So when you hear people talk about real estate not ever going down in Boulder, you can't lose money in real estate, I want you to remember this house. And we do talk about this almost every week. We talk about winners and losers, and this is a house that has been a loser for the owners. And the previous owners, even when it looked turnkey and amazing, in 2020, which was an insane market, had to play guess the price to get it sold in 2020. And this latest round of sellers paid a premium for that ADU, and then were not able to get that money back and actually lost money, which is pretty rare for Boulder real estate, especially for Boulder real estate in this price range, right? The 1.7 to 2.1 range is really competitive. So this is a house that, the buyer could end up also in the future. Would not shock me if it's back on the market in 2 years, and they're trying desperately to get what they paid for it.
Ouch. Okie dokie. Actually, that's all I'm going to say. Well, when we record the next podcast, I've got a little bit there, but let's leave it at that.
Okay. Let's talk about 8483 Thunderhead. And this is in direct relationship to our discussion earlier of wholesale sharks. I don't know for sure that that's what happened in this transaction, but it sure looks like it. So 8483 Thunderhead hit the market originally it looks like it originally hit the market in April. The reason I'm pausing is because there are 2 listings on the MLS. And the dates are
all
weird.
Over the place.
The dates are very strange on how it's described, because the earlier listing has a date of it's like displayed after the later listing. It's very confusing, but it looks like it hit the market in March at 1.1. April, it was withdrawn. It came back on the market in May at just under $1 million, and then they dropped it to 50,000 within days, like multiple MLS numbers, right? Running simultaneously. And then it was withdrawn from one of the MLS numbers, and it stayed alive on the other one, but then was withdrawn in June. And then while it was withdrawn, it went into pending status. So what that means is the property was not available on the MLS to buy, but was in withdrawn status. And a savvy agent can look up withdrawn properties and realize that this could be a pretty good low offer target. And that appears to be what happened, okay, based on the email addresses and websites of the agents involved. But there was a simultaneous close, at least according to the MLS, on May 8th. And it closed twice on that date for 550 and for 701.050. And what that pattern suggests is that a wholesaler negotiated while it was in pending status to buy the house for 550. And as soon as they were under contract on at 550, they flipped it to another buyer that they had in their network for 701. And there was a simultaneous closing for both 550 and 701, and only the final buyer's name is going to be on it. But that buyer paid, in their minds, probably a $150,000 fee to have this agent look through the MLS and find pendings that have a pattern of possible desperation involved. Owners that have had it for a long time.
Especially this on-off business.
On and off the market.
Yeah.
And then withdrawn and sitting there, which means they're not sure what to do. Like, that just signals, like, distress. Okay? And then you come in with a super low ball offer. I'll pay $550 cash for it, and I'll close in 2 weeks. Right? So that's pretty much what happened. And then at the same time, during those 2 weeks, they found another buyer, and they flipped it for $151,000. And so if I'm the seller looking at this, first, they probably didn't know that this was going to happen. Although good, clever wholesalers, when they put something under contract, have language in the additional provisions that says something like seller acknowledges buyer is a wholesaler and is purchasing this property for profit and will resell it to another buyer to maximize their profit. Like, they say things like that because what they don't want to have happen is the seller drags the agent to court.
Remorse.
Yeah, the seller drags the wholesaler to court and says, you robbed me, you lied, you sold the house for $150,000 more than you paid for it. That should be my money. But that's, they're trying to protect themselves from that liability. But it's just sad to see $151,000 left on the table, right?
Yeah. Especially this house isn't in, from the photos, that much of a state of disrepair. It's on a 0.7 acre lot. Osmond, you know the area a little bit better than I do, so I'll let you cover that. But it's 3 beds, 3.5 bath, 2,600 square foot, right around there. And it's in I like the area quite a bit. Even if you bought it for $750, I think is pretty dang worth it in this spot. It's
a 70s era multi-level with classic 70s era architecture and a bunch of dated stuff inside. It also, like, the exterior looks like a tinderbox with the wood decking and wood siding, both of which look really dry. And it's in an area that's in the wildland urban interface. But it's cool. What the spot is just south of Left Hand Canyon. It feels very woody and pretty, and there are probably social trails everywhere in here. And you can hop on a bike or hop in your car and be in uptown Boulder, the north part of Boulder, in probably 10 minutes or less. Like, not a bad spot. You'll pay higher fire risk, and you'll pay higher insurance for the fire risk and for the age of the structure, and hopefully the new owners harden it. But yeah, this screams wholesale deal. So very interesting transaction. And I think the other reason I think this is a wholesale deal, Hamish, is because the agent that represented the seller originally, right, the agent that had it listed, is an agent with a full service brokerage. And these brokerages are required to put their deal on the MLS, no exception. So in the closing file for that agent, it's going to have listed for $900, sold for $550 cash.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what happened. And that's what they're going to close out the MLS with. And then the new deal, or the second deal the same day, was listed and sold for... Well, they're still subject to MLS rules, okay? But this other brokerage, which is New Western Acquisitions, okay, this is public record, it's still subject to the same rules, but has less oversight. And they also put it on the MLS. They said listed for $659.9, sold for $701.050. I have no idea if it was listed at all, although it appears to have been listed for 3 days, according to the MLS. Right. So it's quite possible that they listed it at $659.900, got a bidding war, and got it sold for $701. And with full permission from the seller that they were going to do that. So, it'd be interesting to get this listing agent on a call to see what actually happened. But if I was the seller, I'd be really upset to see $150,000 of my equity disappear.
Seriously, though. Okay. Oz, we've got to go. Like, we're at hour 50.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to drive for a showing here soon.
Yeah. Okay. So let's remove the next lesson from Sales of the Week.
Okay.
And let's just go to the news. And the news, we're going to go really quickly because it's not something we know a lot about. And thank you, Hamish, for keeping us on track. Clients do come first. And I guess I can be a little verbose. I may need some more water, Hamish.
You want to take a sec? Japanese Babe Ruth.
Yeah, well, how about cue the Beastie Boys and Sabotage? And that is exactly what Shohei, am I saying his name right? Shohei Ohtani?
I don't remember much from my Japanese lessons.
You took Japanese lessons?
It was mandatory in high school growing up, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, so... Look, I'm not the sports person in our family. I'll admit that. And it doesn't ding my manhood at all that my wife knows way more about sports than I do. But it just wasn't a thing when I was growing up to pay a lot of attention to sports. But here is this amazing baseball player who I've heard of because of the deal he negotiated with the LA Dodgers. Because it was so eye-popping when he negotiated it. I remembered it. I was like, holy cow, I can't believe athletes are being paid that much. And then I promptly forgot it. And I also remember that it was this Japanese star baseball player. Well, let's fast forward a couple of years, and the baseball player is getting sued by a real estate investor and a broker. I'm sorry, a real estate investor and the broker, saying that they got fired from a $240 million luxury housing development on the Big Island of Hawaii by Shohei Ohtani. Hamish, can you look up how to say his name so I can stop butchering it? And I'll keep going while you're doing that.
Yeah.
So what happened? What it sounds like what happened is that this broker and investor were developing this luxury housing subdivision and had been working on it for more than a decade, and they brought in Ohtani to promote it.
Saying it perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So Ohtani is the big name here, and anybody that knows anything about Japan knows that there's a lot of Japanese interest in the island. There's a lot of Japanese tourists. There are a lot of Japanese that own second homes. And this was aimed at promoting it specifically to those types of buyers. These are luxury homes with a median price, I think was 17.3. What was the number? It's a really high number. So the average price of these homes in this subdivision was $17.3 million.
Whoa.
And Ohtani and and I guess
he was like the endorsed influencer.
Yeah.
That's like kind of his role.
Yeah. And so him and his investment firm, okay, or maybe him and his broker, basically
like
his agent,
brand
okay.
agent, right?
All right. So
talent agent,
his team, okay? Like somebody, when you're investing at this level, you're not doing it solo. And you may have hired a group of people to be your family office. Like if I was Ohtani, that's how I would handle it. I know exactly the right person I would hire. Like if I won the lottery at a big number next week, I would hire this guy, Tom, I used to work with. And Tom is so diligent. He's ethical. He's not slimy in any way, shape, or form. And he's really driven and really value oriented and smart. And I would say, Tom, what I'd like you to do is set up a whole ladder of bonds and manage the cash flow from these investments. I want like weekly reporting and maybe quarterly reporting. And you bring me the deals that you want to invest in and go hire your team. Like you're going to need a couple of analysts. You're going to use AI like crazy. We'll set you up with a great home office, or if you want an office, near your home, we'll go rent something near your house. But I need to meet with you quarterly because I trust you to take care of these investments for me. And that's how you create your own family office, right? And that's likely what this other firm is. But they aggressively pushed out the developer and the listing agent and did so in a way that, I'll just read you the quote. This case is about abuse of power, the lawsuit says. Defendants use threats and baseless legal claims to force a business partner to betray its contractual obligations and strip plaintiffs of the very project they conceived and built. Defendants must be held accountable for their actions, not shielded by fame or behind-the-scenes agents acting with impunity. Plaintiffs bring this suit to expose defendants' misconduct and to ensure that the rules of contract, fair dealing, and accountability apply equally to all, celebrity or not. And, so he was described as Japan's Babe Ruth and the first resident of these luxury properties. And obviously that's the sizzle to help sell it. And then somehow the family office pushed out the listing agent and the original investor, original developer.
The investor stayed. That's what's the name? Like
it's the developer. So so I think the way they did it was they went around to the capital, right? Kingsbarn Realty Capital.
That's the one, yeah.
And pressure them to drop the listing agent and the developer from the deal, which apparently they did, and hence the lawsuit. And the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because having been involved in real estate development and been behind the scenes, and also having met so many people in the industry, some of whom are shady characters, okay? They don't have ethics and integrity at the forefront of their behavior. And it may not be Ohtani, it might be the people he hired that look for a way to make a lot more money, and a way to make a lot more money is to kick out the original developer and the real estate agent that is contractually got the listings. There's a lot of money at stake. And so why not if you could steal the deal? Well, why not is because of ethics and integrity, but there are people that don't have that in the investment world, and especially in the real estate world.
What I'm like is like in a relationship, say I've got a partner and they cheat on me with somebody else. Do I get mad at my partner for cheating, or do I get mad at that somebody else? So you've got this listing agent and the developer who are in a relationship with the investment company, Kingsbarn, and they're not like mad at Kingsbarn for ditching them and firing them. They're mad at the shiny rapper that they both decided to hire. Which I guess, like, who broke the contract? Doesn't Kingsbarn break the contract?
Well, so this is what's interesting, and I think that the strategy for the legal team is to attack Ohtani. I guess. Like, publicly, to shame him and tarnish his reputation. So it would not be surprised me if Ohtani countersues. But so the suit accuses Ohtani and Baleo of tortuous interference and unjust enrichment. You know, it's like, I don't even know what unjust enrichment is. Is that like a legal term? I guess we could look this up.
What's torturous interference too?
Exactly. Like, these terms are really surprising. And I guess the reason I'm paying attention to this is the takeaways are be careful who you do business with. And it would not surprise me if this lawsuit is based on dinging the credibility and reputation of Ohtani, because that's worth so much more in endorsements, right? Like that's his weak spot. I'm sure he's got hundreds of millions of dollars of endorsements in Japan and around the world. He's like the most visible baseball player in the world
at this rate. Yeah.
So you attack him with a big lawsuit because the cost to him to settle that the lost business from the lawsuit, right, is worth so much more than this $240 million lawsuit from the developer, because you're not going to settle for 240. Maybe you settle for 24 or 4, right? Like you settle because this person's attacking your credibility, which is going to cost you a lot more money. And here we are. I'm not even into baseball, and I'm noticing this deal happening and shady people behaving in shady ways. So it just reminds me of a recent local negotiation over the acquisition of a small business that's closely related to real estate. This might be privileged information, so I don't want to share it publicly, but with the names of the entities. But I will say that the original buyer of this real estate related business was a private equity firm. And the day of closing, they said, we're not going to pay for it because of X, Y, or Z reasons. How about you accept 30% of the contract price that we had agreed to pay? Because these reasons, we don't want to pay the full price. And it was really unethical and clearly an attempt to extort the sellers of the business at the finish line. And they thought they're young and dumb, they're desperate for the money, they'll just take it and close. And they said, take a hike, we're not doing it, instead. And then a month later, this private equity firm came back with a better offer, and they just said, absolutely not, we're not negotiating with you at all because of your disreputable behavior. And then they then sold it for a better price about a month later. But it was such a roller coaster.
Good on 'em.
For this investor, this entrepreneur, and their team to deal with this sort of nonsense. And there are shady players in the investment world. There are shady players in the real estate world. Reputations are very difficult to build and very easy to destroy. They have value. And if you're making decisions on who to represent you in anything and who to do business with in anything, look for signs of disreputable behavior. Look for signs of ethical behavior and principles and values. And if it's on a website, okay, like a company is willing to put their principles and values on the website, frankly, use it against them and ask them about the principles and values on their website and say, on the interview, why don't you tell me about the principles and values on your website? And if they don't know them, right off the bat, they have to go look at a screen to answer this question. They don't live those principles and values. They don't, like, they're just marketing fluff. So read people, learn to read people, and you probably can avoid this type of horrific situation tangentially related to real estate.
Tangentially. I like it, though. Good news pick. And the next one.
Well, I mean, Hamish, maybe you could. You want to go? I'll jump into this. Maybe you can.
I think so, because you smelt a little bit of shit in these headlines, and I don't think I know enough to really talk about the nuance between it. I can bring it in, though.
Well, why don't you read the Federal Reserve Bank, kind of the print from the Federal Reserve Bank today on sticky CPI?
The Fed Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay. The Atlanta Fed's Sticky Price Consumer Price Index, a weighted basket of items that change price relatively slowly, rose 4.6% on an annualized basis in July, following a 4.3% increase in June. On a year-over-year basis, the series is up 3.4%. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
I feel like I'm taking Spanish lessons, and I have to read things in Spanish, and I'm reading it, but I'm not understanding it, and this feels very similar. On a core basis, excluding food and energy, the Sticky Price Index rose 4.8% annualized in July, and its 12-month percent change was 3.4%. The flexible cut of the CPI, which is a weighted basket of items that change price relatively frequently, decreased 3.8% in July, and on a year-over-year basis, the series is up 0.8%.
Okay. And if you look at the chart, you see this bubble, right, that occurred starting in January 2021 and more or less ending by April of 2023. So we saw where we see sticky price almost touch 20%, the sticky price CPI. And now it's come back down. But it's been relatively flat, right? It's been hovering right around that zero mark since then, but also increasing. And when you look at this, it's just a little confusing because it is increasing now at a more rapid rate. And the way the stock market, the way the markets in general, not just the stock market, but the bond market, are reacting to this, at least as of the beginning of this podcast, was really surprising. There's a stock market rally happening, and it's all based on the expectation the Fed's going to be cutting rates. Meanwhile, the inflation data, it aligned with expectations, okay? But it still was significant CPI, like, growth. It's like we're looking at 4.6% and 4.3% year over year. So you're over 4%. How is that? Like, we're still seeing, frankly, what looks like pretty high inflation, and the stock market's pricing in a rate cut. And that's the part I don't get, because rate cuts don't happen with inflation. And this is something I think I know something about. And so I find today's market behavior really puzzling. And of course, also a little bit annoying, because I feel like the markets had such a big upswing that I went to cash in a lot of things. So I share this because, for sure, the real estate market would love to see the Fed cut rates. And
totally.
In theory, if the Fed cut rates, the whole yield curve should drop. It'll probably get a little steeper. The low end of the yield curve will get lower. And then maybe the 10-year, which is what closely tracks the 30-year mortgage rate, will drop a little bit, although that's not always guaranteed, right? This is where discount rates and 30-year fixed rate mortgages aren't always connected. But obviously, the entire real estate world would love to see lower rates. Sellers would like to see the market wake back up. Like, you shared that article, Hamish, with 500,000 more sellers in the market than buyers. Like, we're in, generally speaking, a broad buyer's market, not all price ranges and locations. So, I don't even know what to say about what's happening in the market today, other than this is what's happening, and I'm confused by it.
Here's the thing. I'm so right. Not too long ago, the jobs report came out, and that dude lost his job, but also the numbers were low, right? And if I remember right, when jobs are low, that's sometimes rates get cut, right? When the jobs report is not looking so great, or is it the unemployment rate?
So jobs and inflation are two things the Fed cares a lot about.
Yeah.
And the BLS, Bureau of Labor Standards, revised their numbers last week, resulting in the firing of the head of BLS. And the revision was much larger than typical, okay?
Huge.
The left-leaning media is puking all over this, saying that this is a sign of a dictator that's firing the person who's delivering the bad news. The right-side media is saying, wow, these numbers are really like a massive revision. I am in the camp that they should not have fired the BLS director, because I doubt it was politically motivated. Off with your head is like what the Queen of Hearts does when she doesn't get to hear what she wants to hear. But the revision, what's interesting is the size of the revision and how
Huge.
Those numbers
like
are
hundreds
created.
Of thousands, right? Yeah.
And it turns out that, and I was watching a program about this, some of the surveys are mandatory and some of the surveys are not mandatory. And the pace of them getting returned can be delayed based on how much pressure is put on these people to respond. And the delay is the reason that the numbers are revised. It's not because they're faking numbers. But what does it mean when why they're so delayed? And it could be that a lot of people were fired or busy, or what happened that caused such a delay. That's the most interesting part. But we need accurate economic reporting to make economic decisions as a country, as a business, as individuals with their household
just
bank
like
accounts.
Yeah.
And so these big revisions are really frustrating, and I don't think that Trump should have fired the BLS director. But what I think, this is the part that's confusing me, and I'll just read it off of the summary from Grok. CPI accelerated at its fastest pace since January, contributing to the market's optimistic reaction. How is CPI accelerating at its fastest pace in line with expectations for a Fed rate cut? That's the part I don't get. And it seems like the market it's in line with expectation. It was expecting a higher number, so we're going to get a rate cut.
Maybe.
This is the part where we don't know everything in the world. And the bullet for this is Fed rate cut coming. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense why the stock market's up 1% today, at least at the start of this pod. Is it still up that high, Hamish?
I think it went up just a bit more. I've been watching
I mean, I'm going to get like a snarky
1.13%,
Oh my! I'm going to get a snarky comment from a good friend of mine who I told 3 days ago I'm going to all cash. And I also warned him that whenever I do these things, the market tends to move in opposite directions. And the stock market is just
the truth.
This isn't effing rational for the stock market to have this reaction in my mind. And it often, there's a saying on Wall Street, and that's you buy on the news. Sorry, you buy on the whisper and you sell on the news, right? Mm. And as soon as the news hits, your bets are out and you're cashing out. The smart money is selling into this type of thing, which is certainly, if I had sat in the market, that's what I would be doing today is, selling, because I think we're way too high. But I guess that's a topic for another time, Hamish, and we should move on to carve-outs.
And this is entertainment.
Definitely not investment advice. Do not do what I do.
I mean, considering how much we just spent, we don't get this. I'd say it's pretty safe that that's not investment, but it's super weird, right?
I don't get it enough sometimes that I no longer work in the equities markets, because it doesn't make sense to me when people are trading and valuing company on how they feel, right? Meme stocks are another example that just don't make sense to me. I'm a value guy. So the capital I had liquid, it was intended for real estate acquisitions, and putting it back to cash, earning 3 to 4%. Versus sitting in the stock market, I figure I might be giving up some short-term gain to have that capital preservation, particularly at a time period that I'm not going to track the market very closely for the next few weeks due to some travel and other things happening. I'd much rather just be out and have that cash ready for investment for the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
All right, you should launch in your first carve-out, Hamish. It's time to wrap up this pod. Let's talk about what happened that has nothing to do with real estate.
Perfect.
What is BroTown?
My brother's coming to town. It's pretty simple. He's coming from New Zealand. He owns and runs a distillery down there, 1919 Distilling. And Sarin is, you call somebody into, that's his name. You call somebody into the country France, you call him a Francophile. What do you call a USophile? There you go. He quite likes the U.S. and kind of the country stuff. He watched a bit of Yellowstone, so he's got a Stetson hat that he got. I think he's got himself some cowboy boots. And granted, he looks kind of the part. There's also a character in Yellowstone that he looks a lot like. I think it's Brooks or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my mom reckons he's a dead ringer. But
Brooks?
Oh. I think so. Is that right?
Is it Matthew Brooks?
Maybe. I couldn't. I'll have to ask. Anyway, he looks like a character. He's really stoked to be coming to the U.S. He's, we've been back and forth. Our family, we're all dual citizens, that type of deal. But part of the deal was I was going to buy the tickets for these country concerts coming up, and he's going to supply me with 1919 booze. So I've got some New Zealand award-winning gin and whiskey and all sorts of yummy treats on the way. And he'll be staying here at the house. So I'm going to pick him up in my fast car, and it'll be on the back end of his 18-hour flight to get here. And
send me a photo of your brother. I got to see what he looks like.
Yeah, maybe that's going to be the easiest way. But that's about it. Brother's coming. I mean, he'll be here by the time you guys are listening to this. Should be a good time. We've got a few little things planned, and I might have to get myself a cowboy hat too if I'm going to fit in with my brother. But yeah, that's that. Easy, quick carve out. But
hold on, where did you send me this? Where did you send me this?
I haven't yet.
Photo?
I'm going to send it while you're chatting about your carve out.
Oh, all right, okay, all right. Well, my carve out is that last week I told you I was going to go do a 14er, and I did it. I camped in the car. I drove up there, and I've got this little funky sleeping cot. Shout out to Heli Camping or Heli Outdoors, HELE. They're based here in Longmont, and they came up with this bed that has adjustable legs front and back, so you can get the bed to go over the seat hump or over when you lay your seats down. They don't lay flat in most vehicles anymore, and this gets over that seat back, and then the feet drop into the floorboards. So
cool.
you can get a completely level bed in a vehicle that doesn't have a floor that's level, and you can then use the underside of the bed for storage. So I slept in that at the trailhead or close to it for Huron, and I hiked Huron. It's my first 14er in 14 years.
5 years.
5 years. Sorry, did I say 14? First 14er in
like,
5
no
years. Yeah. It's my 13th 14er and my first 14er in 5 years. I think I'm actually in way better shape this year than the last time I did a 14er, and it was pretty easy. Really enjoyed it. Stunning views and really fun interactions with people on the trail. I got to say, probably the most fun I've had on a 14er that I can remember, just in the interactions with people. Like, people are fun and playful, and some are on the struggle bus. You can see it on the way up, and you tell the biggest lie in outdoors.
Oh yeah, you're almost done. Just around that corner.
That's right. It's almost there. You're almost there. It's the biggest lie in outdoor hiking. But what a beautiful state we live in, and I feel so blessed and lucky to get out there and enjoy it and sneak away midweek. I did pop up. I did pop on Starlink to check in, and that was perfect. And your brother looks like Cole Hauser. Rip Wheeler is the actor, and Cole Hauser is the character. And I'm not going to tell my wife that your brother looks like Cole Hauser, because he actually does. His beard's a little furrier. Cole Hauser does not have a beard in the show, I don't think. Or if he did, it was really close. He does, but it's much neater trimmed. Your brother should trim that beard down, but for sure, that's hilarious.
That Customs is going to stop him because of his beard, but
he might. Yeah, that's really funny. All right, cool. Well, I unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to meet your brother on his visit, but that's awesome. He's coming to visit. And that was my Carveout as well, the 14er. And with that, I think it's time to wrap this 2-hour episode of the House Einstein podcast. I will just roll through it really quick, since unfortunately have been doing most of the talking on this pod, Ham.
I've been trying, man.
I guess I had a lot to say. I didn't think I had that much to say. I had a lot to say in this pod.
Hey, we're getting it all in now because we know there's going to be a lull, and there's a lot for you to come and re-listen to.
Well, hopefully you found it entertaining. And as always, we deeply appreciate you as listeners. The feedback has been phenomenal. The comments we've always enjoyed. And if you want more House Einstein, you can reach us at houseeinstein.com. You can also find all of our socials. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're everywhere. And hopefully with content that you like. YouTube is a great place to see our agents talking about neighborhoods and discussing real estate matters. I haven't done a YouTube video in a while, but likely you'll start seeing those appear again in the fourth quarter. And I think that's a good wrap for the pod. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, take care.